guys, welcome back to my channel. So I do get requests to kind of do my updated favourite brushes, makeup brushes, and in all honesty, since the last one nothing's really changed too much, and I don't really go out and buy brushes on a regular basis either. So I thought I'd do it slightly differently and show you 10 brushes that you would need to complete a whole face, and you could easily do a range of looks just using these 10 brushes. I have kind of picked some of my favourite brands, but I've got a lot of similar brushes that do the same thing that work perfectly well. So it's more about the type of brush than the kind of brand itself, but I will have stuff linked down below. But I wanted to do it so if you only could have 10 brushes, or these 10 brushes, you could do an entire full face of makeup and not need anything else. So that's where I'm going with this video. So if you're interested, then please keep on watching. Okay, I'm going to start off with the face brushes, and I only have 4. Because I think personally you don't need any more than that. So the first brush is some kind of foundation brush. Now obviously you can use a sponge if you prefer a sponge, and that will kind of, you know, you can do foundation, concealer, powder with that. I overall prefer a brush, I think, and I much prefer a buffing brush. So something that's quite dense, quite thick, perfect for creams, liquids, things like that. I use this one on a regular basis. This is an iconic London brush. It did come in a face set a while ago, but I know like Real Techniques do loads of like buffing brushes, and Blank Canvas do. So I say for any kind of liquids, creams, a buffing brush is perfect. So I use this for like the Dr. Huschka bronzing tint. I'll then go with the Ilia liquid highlighter, the same brush, foundation, not concealer because it's a bit big, but I could just use my fingers for concealer. If I'm using cream, bronzer and blusher, I'll use the same brush, just because if I use the same brush as I did with foundation, I find everything just blends that much nicer together, and a big buffing brush just makes everything much quicker, in my opinion. So brush number 1 I'd recommend is some form of buffing brush, because I think it's very well, you can use it for multiple things, and it just works perfectly with foundations. And you can use it with powder foundations if you're more of a powder foundation person, but I would go in a bit lighter because it will pick up a fair amount of product. But yeah, this is my go-to buffing brush. Now this next brush, if you're someone who uses a sponge, you won't necessarily need this, or for your fingers you won't necessarily need this, but it is a concealer brush. I do find them handy because sometimes I find it just gives me lighter coverage in certain areas. So I've got a really bad spot, I'll go in with this first and kind of really layer out the concealer and then tap out my finger. This is really good as well for laying down a cream base on your eyes or an eye primer. It just fits nicely, and yeah, it kind of gets really nicely into the nose as well if you put concealer around your nose and things like that. So again, if you use a sponge or you prefer fingers, you won't need this, but I do think a concealer brush can be handy for, like I said, cream eyeshadows as well as kind of face products. Again, this is an iconic London brush, but any kind of, I know Real Techniques do a similar one. Again, something quite dense and thick, because it will just, it will pick up a fair amount of product, but it will blend out really nicely as well. I just think it fits nicely in the kind of areas you want to go for, and if you're tapping on a concealer. So that is brush number 2, which I would definitely recommend. Okay, the next one is the Real Techniques setting brush, and I will say this brand in particular for this brush I love a lot. So this again is very multi-use. So you know, I like to, if I'm setting, I'm someone who doesn't tend to set the entire skin, and if I do set anywhere, it's usually kind of under my eyes, my T-zone area. So this brush is great because it gets right nicely in there. You can really kind of pat the powder on around the T-zone area. It's also great for powder highlighter. It's kind of a really nice shape to really blend that powder highlighter on. Also, what I did use it for sometimes is blending out eyeshadow. If you want that real wash or just a real good blend in the crease, this works really nicely. It fits nicely in there for that wash of colour, blends things out really quickly. So yeah, so I think this is actually a really worthwhile brush to have in your collection. Again, because it's obviously multi-use, it fits nicely in the areas, and I think this is one of like the very first brushes I had, so it's lasted a really long time as well, and Real Techniques is really kind of accessible. Well, I know shops aren't open at the moment, but they're affordable as well, I think. So that, I think, is a really helpful brush to have. The final face brush is some kind of overall powder brush. So for me, it's the Duo Fibre face brush. I will happily use this if I do for some reason want to set the rest of my skin. I'll go in a fluffy brush like this and set the skin. If I'm using powder bronzer, this is kind of a good brush to use because it fits nicely and it disperses, because it's not too dense, it picks up a right amount of powder and just disperses it and blends out really nicely. And I will use this for blusher and go on the cheek. So I think this is a really good brush to have. Again, I use it for multiple things. If you are into your contouring, then you might want something a bit smaller. Maybe something more like an angled brush like this. This is a Luxie 504. But I'm not into contouring really, and I just think this gives a nice bronze to the skin. It will give a nice blush. Set the skin if you want to really nicely. So I'd say this is kind of the last and final face brush you really need to create a full face of makeup. Moving on to eyes, obviously I had 6 brushes, so a few more than face. But one is an eyebrow brush or an angled brush. You can use this obviously to create a wing liner as well if you wanted to with eyeshadow. But this is great for the brows. This is the Luxie 215. It is one of my favourite ones for brows because it is, as you can see, quite small. And I prefer that. I can kind of create thin like strokes, hair-like strokes, and it just fits nicely on the brow. I just find it really quick and easy to use this as well. So I would definitely recommend having some form of angled brush for eyebrows. Obviously if you fill your eyebrows in with pencil, then you won't necessarily need this, although like I said, for powder liners, excellent. So the last 5 are for eye makeup, and I've kind of got a nice selection here because I feel you can achieve all looks using this, and they're for different purposes, and I think these 5 are the only 5 you would need to complete any form of eye look. So I'm going to start off with this one here. So you would want some kind of fluffy brush just to kind of help blend any edges out. A fluffy brush will just really soften things. Also, if you just want a washer colour, a fluffy brush tends to be better because it won't pick up as much product, so you can do a nice wash. But I always feel some kind of fluffy brush is essential for blending anything out, and it's really nice and soft. And this is the Luxie 205 Tapered Blending. I've got quite a few fluffy brushes I go between, so this is a great one, but there are loads of great ones as well. But yeah, any kind of fluffy brush just really will help the blending process. A nice wash of colour across the eyes, and it's definitely a worthwhile thing to have in your kit. The next one is more for kind of more crease work or actually deepening up the outer corners. This is a Sigma brush. This is the E25 blending brush. It's great for getting in that crease if you want to really deepen up the crease. Again, like I said, deepening up the outer corner, or if you're creating a halo eye. And it will blend as well nicely, so you can really kind of pack on an eyeshadow to begin with, start blending it out, and once you feel like you can't blend anymore with that, that's when the fluffy brush comes into it. But this one will pick up a lot more product, so it really is for that kind of colour impact, whether it's like a neutral shade or a colour shade, and just getting right into that crease and then deepening the outer corner. And actually it will fit nicely along the lower lash line. It will give a slightly kind of more, not grungier look, but it will bring it down a little bit more. I do have another brush for kind of more, if you want a tighter look around the lower lash line, but again, some kind of crease blending brush, dense brush is definitely worthwhile. Moving on to the actual lid, this is great for mattes and shimmers, but in particular shimmers, you really want to pack that colour onto that lid and get it on there. And it's some form of shading brush. This happens to be the 100% Pure shading brush, but this works, this is kind of like for your main colour, the main statement on your eye, whether it be, like I said, shimmer or even a matte. This will pick up a lot of shadow. It'll really, I'd pack on, this is more for packing on colour, which again will help for that impact of the shade. And yeah, it's really good for packing on and really getting that shimmer or matte onto the lid, and it fit nicely. and if you wanted to kind of have it so it doesn't go above the crease, it kind of does fit and follow nicely the crease area. And again, this can be used to go along the lower lash line and buff things out that way. Like I said, for the lower lash line, if you want to pinpoint a bit more, have it a bit tighter, wrap around the eye, or even if I use this for kind of deepening up along the upper lash line, is some form of pencil brush. Now this is definitely the oldest pencil brush I have. I don't think you can get it anymore, but it's from Kiko. A lot of people do ask me where it's from. But this is, like I said, great for getting right under that lower lash line and kind of keeping it quite tight to the lash line, not too far out. And also good for getting in like above the upper lash line, just to give that little definition on the outer corner, which I do often like to do. Again, Iconic London do a really nice one, and I'm sure loads like Real Techniques and Luxie must do one, but this Kiko one I've had for years and years, and it's still one of my favourites. But a pencil brush I think is great for in your kit. And the final brush I picked was actually something for more detailed work. It's great for the inner corner highlight or the brow bone highlight, or if you just want like a really small, yeah, it's great for details. If you kind of want just right in the centre, you want a little bit of shimmer but nothing too crazy. Some kind of small flat brush like this is great for those purposes. This is from a brand called Freedom, which is, or was, I don't know if it's still around, was part of like the Makeup Revolution sister brands. I know Superdrug do their own version, and lots of places will do their own version of just a small flat brush. Like I said, great for detail work, so getting right in there, you can bring the shimmer up. Great for the brow bone, or if you just want that really pop of shimmer right in the centre of the lid, this works perfectly. And again, with shimmers, this will be excellent because it just picks up a nice lot, and I'll find you won't get as much fallout with a smaller brush as well, because it's really dense and you can really just push it onto the eyes. So those are the 10 brushes I would recommend, or types of brushes I would recommend to complete a full face. I just thought it'd be a different way of me showcasing some of my favourite go-to brushes, and I truly believe if you only could have 10 brushes, these are all you need to create all the looks. So if you're someone who prefers like the cream and liquid route for the base, then I've got you covered with these brushes. And then if you prefer like powdering the skin and powder highlight blusher and bronzer, you've got these little brushes to use as well. Like I said, we've got some multi-use here, so you can use that for eye primer or cream eyeshadow. This, not for powder highlighter, but also really blending out if you really want to blend out those edges, or just a wash of colour. Yeah. Then an angled liner brush for if you're someone who uses powder brow products or to create powder wing liners, which I do prefer, I think they give a softer look. And then these 5 brushes to create an eye look. And I do think these are the only brushes or types of brushes you would need to create a full eye look. So you've got one to get that colour down in the crease on the outer portion. You can blend it out, it fits nicely in the crease. And then further blend out and really smoke it out with a fluffy brush. For packing onto the lid, matte or shimmer, again that colour down, a statement colour shading brush is perfect. Again, it can go along the lower lash line. For more of your lower lash line work, or even just the deepening up or to find the upper lash line, a pencil brush is perfect. And then for any small detail work, like the inner corner highlight or the brow bone highlight, or just like a pop of shimmer, a small flat detail brush is perfect. So I hope you found that interesting. A slightly quicker video today, but I thought it was just like an interesting and a different way of me doing a brush video, because like I said, I don't buy too many brushes often because I stick with my favourite ones, and then if they kind of go bad, I tend to replace them. So I will link these all down below if I can, but I also will link kind of alternatives, because some of these I think, like these 2 brushes, I know loads of brands do very similar brushes that also work perfectly well. So for these, it's not so much about the brand, it's about the type of brush. This setting brush I do think from Real Techniques is really good. So it's kind of a real mixture in there, but I'll have them linked down below, and any alternatives as well for you to check out. And yeah, I hope you found this interesting and enjoyable. Please leave any requests for future videos down below. And yeah, I will see you in my next video.